Yo! Video games.
What up, dudes, and welcome back to the YoVideogames podcast. I'm Matt.
And I'm Andrew.
And once again, thank you to all our generous patrons who've kept us going for 330 episodes.
Yeah, if you want to become a patron at any level, please check out patreon.com/YoVideogamespodcast. Due to the week is Windy City Kid. Thank you, Windy City Kid.
Thank you, Windy City Kid. Yeah, I've always wanted to visit Albuquerque.
How dare you? How dare you? The amount of people from Chicago that are screaming and dying. All your favorite arcade is in Chicago, and you do them dirty like that. That's fucked up.
It's just a test to see if anyone, if everyone's paying attention, to the name Windy City, which I first learned about that name from a Super NES game, Trouble in Windy City. What was the name of it? It was one of those. Remember back when a bunch of NBA superstars were getting really weird crossover games? Obviously the most infamous being Shaq Fu.
Yeah. Yes, I do.
There was one. Yeah, sorry, Michael Jordan's Chaos in Windy City.
Wow.
For the Super NES.
Wasn't there also a steel game with Shaq? Like to correspond to the movie?
Like with the movie Steel? Oh.
Wasn't there? I feel like there was, and people kept thinking that it was like a RoboCop. Like a RoboCop type. I can't.
That
I
does
vaguely
sound
remember
a bit
something like
right.
that, but I just remember there's like it's him holding the hammer that he used, and he's in like the big ass armor and just like in big block letters Steel. Maybe it's the movie poster I'm thinking of.
You might just think, because I don't remember a Steel video. I mean, I remember the movie, I remember the commercials for it, but
yeah, that might be what I'm remembering.
A Shaquille O'Neal based Steel.
When did that come out?
That came out right in the mid late 90s.
Yeah, so I was
right in the era of the really, really bad superhero movies.
I was a wee babe.
Chaos in Windy City. Hell of a title. You got to see the box art. He's holding two, not one but two balls. One of them being on fire. And speaking of balls on fire, we should probably talk about our sponsor,
Manscaped. It's
and more importantly, the importance of maintaining your balls, especially going into this month.
Yeah, so it's Testicular Cancer Awareness Month, and so April's kind of like the spring cleaning and check your balls for cancer month. Maybe that's a little dark, and I'm sorry, but it is a cool initiative. So Manscaped's got this initiative called We Save Balls. And I think they have like shirts and stuff you can get. And I'm not sure how that works into the initiative, but as a part of that initiative, they raise awareness for the Testicular Cancer Society. And I don't know. I mean, you don't really hear a lot about testicular cancer. You always think of like Movember or, there's not a lot of discussion. And most of the time,
cancer could come anywhere at any time.
Yeah.
And including your balls.
And if you have gigantic, enormous balls, just make sure that it's not cancer.
Right. And one of the best ways, to really check up on even on yourself, and make sure everything's
clean them up
good is to clean them up. So one of the best ways to keep your balls nice and visible is with the Lawnmower 4.0 from Manscaped, which comes with a variety of different hair lengths.
They've got the whole performance package. You could do, it comes with like the lawnmower, the ear trimmers, all the, wireless charging and shit like that. And then it also comes with the crop reviver and the crop preserver.
Which is basically lotion / deodorant for your balls.
Yeah, keeps you getting that fucking swamp ass smell just tracking around to the nuts. You don't want that. It's spring, and ideally for most of the country, I mean we've had our balls out pretty much all winter because it's warm here all the time. But for a lot of the country, snow's melting. Time to just bust out those little snow bunnies, guys.
That's
Maybe
right.
don't do it at a school. Do it in
And if
do it
you
in your
if you
homes.
want and if you want a product that's going to be gentler on your nuts than a very quiet spoken doctor, I'm not sure what a testicular doctor would be. What would that be?
A normal
Uh,
ass physician. I let me
yeah, right.
paint
Because
let me paint you a
okay, because
picture.
how there's like colonoscopy or colonoscopists or whatever the fuck. I don't know if there's a balloscopist, but you can be your bone balloscopist.
I
Um,
Yeah, I don't know what the doctor that checks your broveries is called.
your ovaries.
But I have a distinct awkward memory of like the last like time I got to go to my pediatric doctor. I don't know how. I think I must have been like 12 or 13, and like out of nowhere, this tiny I think she was Filipino. This like withered old lady just goes, "Okay, drop shorts," and I'm like, "Wait, what?" Like, no one warned me. No one gave me any update. They're just like drop trow. And you know what? If I would have had the fucking lawnmower 4.0, I probably would have been a little bit more confident. But nothing really prepares you for that. Anyway, if you would like to be prepared for the next time that your doctor asks you to drop trow, use our code YoVG at manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping worldwide. And I don't know, maybe you seduce that old lady or man, if that's if that's what you're into.
Maybe you can end up with a nice dinner date.
Yeah, I
She'll be
mean,
so impressed by by the cleanliness and the upkeep that
you're
you take
locking
care
in a
of yourself.
doctor.
That they're interested in seeing what else you can do with your hands. So
What
yeah, you could.
we're what we're really saying is that if you ever want to lock down a doctor, you gotta have nice balls.
Yeah, please don't actually hit on your doctor. They don't want to hear it.
I'm don't hit on any professional in a work setting, I guess. But look, if I have my dick out, it- I got to say something to break the ice. And if the best I can do is a joke about taking you to dinner first, that's what's going to happen to make me feel
When I've even
comfortable.
said it on this podcast before, sometimes that doesn't even work. Like when I'm at the dentist and they're like, poking around and I start like gagging, and I'm like, sorry, I have a really bad gag reflex. Really hurts the weekend job. Nobody says anything.
I mean,
No,
maybe that's.
just stone silence every time.
I just cringe at like how many times that poor doctor has heard like some dude drop trow and be like, "At least take me to dinner first." But in my mind, it's funnier when it
See, my
happens a
joke is
million
on is
times.
on me, but
Yeah, sure. But it's funny that we were talking about Real Steel type, or not Real Steel. Real Steel's the Hugh Jackman movie.
yes, which apparently is getting a Netflix or some streaming service series is picking it up.
Apparently,
I
like a
forget which
lot of
one.
people loved that movie.
Paramount or Peacock. Yeah, it had one of those. It's kind of one of those like.
Cult following.
Yeah, it's kind of like. Do you remember? Well, this is before your time, before my time. Let's be honest, I'm not that fucking old. Willy Wonka, the original Gene Wilder one.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Was a bomb, a huge box office bomb.
Yeah, but I loved it as a kid.
And it 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 became what it is today because of VHS and cable reruns.
Yeah.
And it was kind of because there's a really I think it was Defunct Land or Yesterworld, one of those people on YouTube. They had a pretty good documentary, basically kind of like describing where the movie industry was at the late 60s, early 70s, and kind of like what it meant for a lot of things and why things were a certain way, and then really kind of like how much of a game changer cable was, and how there used to be a big, and I do remember this. I am old enough to remember this. I remember when it would become a huge effing deal when one network was going to air a movie like on prime time, Saturday night, Sunday night, whatever.
Oh yeah, yeah.
They'd take out like billboard ads, they'd take out like newspaper ads, TV guide ads, print media would have whole spreads advertising this movie, this older movie is going to be shown on
TV.
on TV
Yeah.
this one time. And the last time there was ever a really big push for that was, and it cost millions of dollars, was Fox paid Universal millions and millions of dollars to be the first channel, beating HBO and other prime time, Prime paid subscription stuff, beating them to air The Lost World. And not only did he beat HBO to the punch, they actually played a director's cut. Well, not really a director's cut, but like a special edition, which has never been put on DVD, by the way, in any form. So he wanted it on Fox, and he wanted it to beat the premium movie channels. And he was playing a longer version of the film that didn't exist anywhere previously. And I think there was either no commercials or very limited commercials on it. Like, it was this huge fucking ordeal. And it's crazy because, like, you can find the scenes, you can watch them online. I think the cut scenes are on DVD, but the edited into a full film version aired once on TV.
What a weird movie to pick for that.
I mean, it was huge at the time, and I'm very much one of those people like Lost World sucked. And some people are like, how dare you?
I liked it, and I think it didn't deserve the hate it got.
Here's the thing: all the Jurassic sequels suck to various degrees.
Sequels, for the most part, suck.
Like they're all bad to various degrees. I think Lost World is like needlessly overblown and long and stupid, and and like I actually prefer 3 more just because it's shorter.
How dare you? There's gymnastics.
Just because it's shorter, and I don't. Yeah, that you just exactly right. Exactly, Andrew. There's gymnastics. I almost prefer, and I love Jeff Goldblum, but I don't think he's leading man material in an action movie. And his backup man being Vince Vaughn.
You know what movie?
Is also not action man leading movie material. So
you know what he's leading man material for? He's leading man material.
Lost World.
No, he's leading man material for horror and sci-fi horror. He was amazing in The Fly. But like, if you
He's
could,
great in '94.
Yeah, if you could figure out how to do a good cosmic horror movie, Jeff Goldblum's your man.
Yeah, totally. I just don't think
he's
playing the role Sam Neill should have been called back for.
I think that was the plan.
I don't know.
In my heart of hearts, I'm like, that makes more sense.
It really feels like they both should have been back. It shouldn't have been one in the I don't know, whatever.
Sam Neill's the main fucking character in the first one.
I know. The main character of Lost World should have been the hunter guy, though, the only smart person in the whole goddamn movie.
Yeah, that would have been great.
Pete Townsend or something, I think was the actor or something.
Yeah, something that really always bothered me about that movie, as just like not in like a I'm up in arms gonna boycott it or something, but like, why is it like the 2000s and they have a dude from colonial England hunting a dinosaur with his colonial era Indian sidekick?
Well, that guy barely's in the movie. He had much more prominent roles, but sorry, Pete Postlethwaite was the actor's name. I said Pete Townsend. I think I literally said a member of the Who or something.
Yeah. Look, I wasn't gonna call you out. I was just gonna go with you.
But yeah, like no, you're right. And then there's a pretty actually cool cutscene, but it only exemplifies the whole. Did Rudyard Kipling write this script?
Yeah,
aspect of it. That's a history joke.
Speaking of, but all this to say, really old weird games that I mean, not all of them are weird that you're going back and playing, but like, there's a lot of older games that just like going back and playing them now has got to be a trip, right?
Yeah. And licensed games are the ones that hold up the weirdest.
Yeah,
because a lot of times they're bad, and then a lot of times they're experimental because
they have nothing to do with the movies.
Yeah, and they're like, what, like it was it'll be like a weird movie or a weird show to begin with, and you're like, how do I make a game out of this? And then like. Sometimes people just come up with the weirdest, dumbest shit. I think the late 90s to the early 2000s had a lot of licensed titles that were all garbage. I think because the mindset is that licensed stuff is crap. And that's actually not true. Not entirely. Like, I would say it was actually closer to 50-50 during the NES era, the early 8-bit era, early 8 to 16. I would say it's 50-50. And the only reason it's 50-50 is almost specifically because of LJN and THQ. Where it was just like...
tried?
Well, it's like those two in particular, and THQ literally was created as from former LJN people. So it's like, it's really just... this group of like just make a quick buck assholes, and the rest of the licensed material was actually fairly good. The Ninja Turtle games were great, the Tiny Toon games were great, all the Disney Afternoon Capcom games were pretty great. A lot of the Sega Disney games were great. Like there was a couple that weren't great, but I mean, like it would have been like 80-20
Do you think that
licensed
that's
games favor if LJN didn't just run around and grab a license and shit a game out in a couple months for whatever they could.
do you think that like a lot of those good ones though are because their source material sort of transitioned?
No, not at all.
Well, I mean, like Tiny Toons being a cartoony platformer makes some sort of sense. Ninja Turtles being a 4-player, or a multiplayer beat 'em up makes sense.
Yeah, Ninja Turtles being a beat 'em up makes sense. Tiny Toons is a weird one because Tiny Toons is like a variety hour style cartoon.
Fair.
And some of the episodes are adventurous. Some of them. And then some of them are really not, but like they were just kind of like. And the Tiny Toon games are fucking like they jump all over the place because you definitely have platformers, which is kind of like the go-to, right, of that era. Just make a 2D platformer. But then you have Cartoon Workshop on the NES, which is like literally just Mario Paint, early era Mario Paint.
Oh yeah.
I have that game. And then you had the second one on NES.
I think we had you know what? I had like a cousin that had that game.
I have it if you ever want to play it again.
Yeah, wasn't there? Didn't they make like an accessory for that shit, or was that
not for
later?
that? Not for that game in particular, but
what was the old? Do you remember the old retro? Like it was like a bigger. God, what system was that for? It was like a bigger gray tablet-looking type thing with a joystick for drawing, and then you had different buttons for.
You're probably thinking of a Sega Pico TV or something.
Maybe, yeah. God, that was weird as shit. I don't think I've ever felt old until I had this vivid memory of sitting in a den with shag carpeting, like fucking with that on one of those old TVs that had a dial. Like, dude, I just had wow, I'm tripping balls now. That was weird as hell.
Yeah, like then they had a whole series of sports games with Tiny Toons. They had a weird they had a couple of variety games. The Tiny Toons 2, Trouble in Wacky Land on the NES, and Buster Bust Loose on the Super NES. So probably the most true to the spirit of the TV show because they're variety games.
One of which we played on stream, right?
Yeah,
during Saturday morning cartoons.
Yeah, and they only did one Animaniacs game for Super NES and one for Genesis because Japan didn't care about Animaniacs. I'm kind of with them on that one as well. But what's interesting, what's interesting is that like when Konami did Animaniacs, we only did once because they were way more into Tiny Toons. That's why there's literally 10 Tiny Toon Konami games. They decided, hey, there's 3 of them and they're all different, right? So they look at it and go, Lost Vikings. And so, like I think it's the Genesis version of Animaniacs is a Lost Vikings clone, which is actually fairly interesting. And what a great use of a very vague concept.
How did they sell that though?
Well, they didn't. Like it didn't sell well. It came out so late in the Genesis and Super NES's life.
Okay, but how did they sell that to get published? Like, how did they sell that to the higher ups?
I go back to Aaron a long time ago. Aaron from Game Grumps said when someone brought up about how did these licensed games get pitched and sold, and I don't think they thought much about them at all. For them, it was like napkins. It was like, hey, we want
crapping them out.
Like, hey, we want to make Aladdin themed napkins. Will you sell to American Greetings Corp? Yeah, sure, whatever. Fuck it, I don't care. Like it was probably like they someone went to Konami and said, hey, we want you to make an Animaniacs game, and they're like, okay, I guess.
Well, if it was the 80s, they were too busy counting their money, and if it was the 90s, they were looking for any money they could get.
Right, and Animaniacs was mid 90s, so yeah, I personally think there was little to zero oversight back on NES and Super NES era. For them, it was like they're making Konami's making a game about Tiny Toons. Are we gonna like check up on it, see if it does it fit the spirit of this? No, I don't give a fuck.
So like, no. I mean, okay, licensed games aside, though, you've been going back and doing like a bunch of retro, just older games.
I've been doing the Xeno Legacy, which we got all the way up to Xenosaga 1 last night, and it's as bad as I
Woof.
remember it. Yeah, woof indeed.
Woof.
Do you have any weird personal history with that game? I'm curious.
I
'Cause-
never played it. So a lot of my memories with a lot of the retro games are watching my brother play. You know, like when you're the
Mhm.
younger brother, so you don't get
Oh, absolutely,
you
100%.
get the last turn, and by then Dad wants to watch a movie on TNT, so you don't get a whole lot of time.
Dad wants to
Uh,
watch Baywatch.
Yeah, pretty much. So it was like a lot of me sitting on the floor watching my brother play, and I just have I have very like vague memories of that game, and all I remember is it was one of the most boring games to watch. Now, granted, a lot of retro games probably weren't everybody's favorite to watch,
Well, the funniest thing is because
but
Xenosaga is a movie. It's there's I actually got very far into the game last night because I'm
yeah,
using Game Shark codes because I'm not spending any more time on this game
you
than
fucking cheater.
fucking necessary. And you actually only are in control of the character 12 to 15 times
Huh.
through the course of the game. It's all cutscene otherwise.
I mean, like, granted, I'm pulling this from
And like
20 years ago, but
9
more
or
than
10 of the times you're actually fighting, actually engaging in battles. And the game is boring as shit. The characters are boring as shit. The voice acting sucks. Like there's so many things wrong with the
well,
game.
yeah, I remember the voice acting being kind of bad. But I also just kind of remember like even the music wasn't that great. Like
There is no music.
like yeah, is that
That's
why
the
I'm not?
that is the weirdest thing about that game because it's very Star Trek Next Gen and Deep Space Nine where like they just don't play music for the vast majority of the game.
As an artistic choice? Why do I have a memory? Like I have a memory of there being maybe it's just the title music,
No, there's no title screen music.
dude. Then maybe I'm not even remembering the fucking right game.
Could be part 2 or something. I don't know, 2 or 3, which had way more music going in it and for it.
It's one of the only because games were expensive as hell. Pretty much
Yeah.
every game we ever bought, we played to death, or Phil played to death, and I watched. Like I watched him play Final Fantasy VII like 3 or 4 times through.
Yeah, and
to
I watched
back.
my brother play 7 and 8.
Yeah. So I think that's that and one other game like he just never got through. And the other game is Shin Megami Tensei. But that really wasn't that wasn't because the game was bad. That was just our PS2 finally died. And then when I went out and got a slim,
it was mercy.
I went out and got a slim PS2. And I think by then, yeah, he just had lost interest or something. Maybe I don't know.
Here's an interesting thing because those games are games you watch and read.
Yeah.
You don't play them very much, and the gameplay. And like I said, the gameplay of old turn-based RPGs is about as engaging as using an ATM machine. You're picking options on a menu, and then you're just watching shit happen. Yeah, and that's a whole nother debate where like people are like I love turn-based, and I'm like whatever you do you. But here's a good question as an observer, and you really Xenosaga you just watch anyways, whether
That's all
you're
that's all
holding
you
the
do.
controller or not. Did you ever find any? Do you ever have any fond memories of the story or characters in any PS1, PS2 RPGs? As an observer, were any of them super engaging for you at all, or was it kind of just like I'm just killing time?
I don't know about PS1, PS2. A lot of my favorite RPG characters were in like Skies of Arcadia.
Oh yes,
So similar era, I guess, but
pretty close.
Not the same. I'm trying to think like did I have an absolute favorite? Well, okay. I mean, if we're going to talk Final Fantasy VII, always liked Barrett, always liked Sid. Even in the original.
Yeah.
I think Sid's cool as hell looking. But in hindsight, after playing Remake, I went and watched a bunch of the older stuff and like realized like, oh, there's not a lot of actual personality in the old game. Like some of it is me just like putting that in there. If that makes sense. Like I think because it's most of it's like text based. You throw in a lot of that.
Yeah, that is a very good point, and that's where it becomes really tricky when you're doing a major remake
It was
for 7.
Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne, by the way,
Oh yeah.
on
Oh, I know which
PlayStation
one.
2.
Yeah, featuring Dante from Capcom's Devil May Cry series.
We still have that somewhere in a Tupperware with just a bunch of other games. I watched our friend
And
Ian
people
play
still
that
can't get
too.
over the fact that they stuck a little sticker on the box that says featuring Dante from Capcom's Devil May Cry series. It's one of the weirdest memes I've ever seen, where it's just like people just can't fucking get enough of that little sticker.
What does it get like slapped onto other things? I haven't
Yeah,
seen this meme.
yeah, like people will slap it onto like a fake box arts and stuff like that.
Hell yeah.
Um,
That's actually kind of funny.
I guess I'm just like, well, yeah, it features Dante. I guess. I mean,
Well,
it's
I don't know. It's just kind of a funny
it's
selling point, I guess.
I don't know why that
I don't know. I can't explain why I find it funny, but I kind of find it a little funny.
It's the same thing with like Sonic 3 and Knuckles. So like when you put the two together, it adds a different title screen that says Sonic 3 and Knuckles.
Yeah.
Or Knuckles the Echidna in Sonic the Hedgehog 2.
Which, by the
So
way, I
people,
thought was the coolest fucking thing ever. That opening
right,
top
yeah.
cartridge. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, super cool.
So a lot of times, people will add like and Knuckles, to like,
Also,
oh, this is Street Fighter 2 and Knuckles.
and Knuckles. Speaking of Knuckles, like now that he's going to be in the next movie, like, do you remember Knuckles having a distinct personality in the old games, like in Sonic and Knuckles?
He's just okay. Knuckles is, as I say this with this shit hanging right behind me.
Knuckles the enchilada.
He's another anti-Sonic. Like,
Yeah, he's just a bad boy, right?
The idea was that like Robotnik tricks him into thinking Sonic's trying to steal the Master Emerald in Sonic 3. So he thwarts Sonic all throughout Sonic 3 and Sonic and Knuckles until you get to the Hidden Palace Zone. So he's like another like he's another anti-Sonic.
Yeah.
Which is why I hate Shadow personally, because I'm like he's like the 4th or 5th time they did an anti-Sonic, because they had like Metal Sonic, Mecha Sonic, a second Metal Sonic in Sonic 3, and then Knuckles, and then Sega CD, and then there's like, and now here's Shadow. He's like Sonic, but he's black.
Yeah, but Knuckles is the coolest.
I mean, he's evil, and he's also white and red, but he's mostly a black hedgehog. So, what are we going to distinguish with? Let's give him a gun. Okay, Sega, good job.
But Knuckles was the coolest because he could climb. That's why he's the coolest.
And glide. He
could,
fun.
Gliding and climbing was cool.
Sonic 3K again, was my favorite Sonic game for the longest time. But it was a game you never wanted to play as Sonic, because Tails can swim and Tails can fly, Knuckles can glide and climb. Why would you ever play Sonic?
Because he's blue and he's gotta go fast.
He gets extra abilities off the shields, I guess. Whatever.
Yeah.
But
so one of the other games that you were talking about you had played again recently is Perfect Dark. Does it hold up?
Yeah. I played Perfect Dark recently, online co-op, because
not the 360 version. You played the
no, it was 360.
Oh, it was 360 version. Okay.
So of the N64 game, the upres of it.
Yeah.
And I was playing that co-op online, and I just had a wonderful time. I really went back and I was like, you know what, this game is great. Like, I've always liked the game, and I've always kind of like, standed for the game, if you will. But like, and not just because, like, I mean, again, like Microsoft's really doing the backwards compatibility right, because granted, this is not quite the N64 version, but it is a version.
And I mean, I don't think
it's on Game Pass. And it's one of those old games where like it really benefits from, this is a remaster. Like, all you had to do was clean up the resolution, and then make it run at 60 frames nonstop, because you had the ability to. You didn't have to do anything else. They didn't touch up the graphics. They didn't, or I mean, like, no new polygons, no new textures, just cleaned up textures, right? The thing they did add though is that you can play online. You can play with people, co-op, counter-op, and multiplayer.
Yeah, that's
and
cool.
I went through the whole campaign co-op, and it was just fucking great. Like, we were playing on just the easy mode, where you have far less objectives, but man, that game is just, it's so cool how there's so many different areas you go to, and the story is neat. Like, it goes Cyberpunk and then Area 51, and it's like this big love letter
Yeah.
to a bunch of different science fiction. You go to another alien planet at some point, like it's
Why don't I remember that part?
that's the last level. You go to the Skeetar Palace.
Weird.
So like the last three levels are your home base gets attacked, which is like the lobby you walk around in normally when you're
Right.
not playing the
Yeah.
game becomes a level, and it's full of enemies, and you have to like save all the other people. And then you get captured, and then you're on the Skidar ship in space, and you take over the ship, and then it goes to the Skidar ruins, and you have to kill the
I
the shaman, whatever ruler of the Skidar. You shoot the statue behind him, and then it kills him.
That's wild because I have no recollection. I can't
The last
picture the
level,
levels.
you're all fighting aliens that sound like panthers, and they have cloaking devices and stuff.
Okay, I remember the cloaking device. I don't know why I'm blanking on like I have distinct memories of playing through the game and then I can't remember the last level.
It's an outdoor level. It's in daytime.
Huh.
It's in a canyon.
That's wild as shit.
The game's great. It's so good.
Do I have
And
testicular cancer?
it honestly it
Just-
honestly kind of like it kind of like shocks me in a way, because it's like they just don't make them like this anymore. They don't have levels that have a lot of variety and locations, and then they have all these different things you do in the level, and like the difficulty is based on how many tasks you're given. So if you're playing on the easiest, there's going to be a lot of sections of the level you don't really have to go to because nothing's there for you. But if you're playing on a higher difficulty, you're given way more goals and tasks per level, which
Yeah.
then require you to go to all these different other places in the level and do stuff. And it was so funny. There'd be times where I'd be getting lost because like even I can't remember everything, so I'd be lost, and then like and I'm hearing the person I'm playing with is just after I hear all the guys going, "Oh, you got me! Oh, you bitch!" Like because that's what they yell out
Yeah.
at you. So I hearing all these gunshots and all these like death cries from all these people. I'm like, "You having a good time up there?" Oh yeah.
I feel that way about like the Time Splitters series in general where
Right, because
like
it's the same developers, really.
yeah,
So.
you don't get that co-op experience the same way anymore. And then recently I played Sniper Elite 4 co-op and it sort of scratched that itch that I had where it was like you can separate and have totally separate, you like all the challenges can build on each other and I had that same sort of experience. It gave me like a real nostalgia boner. I mean, I don't know that I would call it the best game ever, but it's pretty fucking good. And so
Yeah,
if you're ever having a nostalgia boner for co-op experiences, Sniper Elite 4, man.
I think just in a way, like Perfect Dark was a really good example of this was a game that didn't need to be remade. It didn't really.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be cool if they did, but like all it really needed was to run at 60 frames and look clean. Smooth it up. Get rid of the N64 blur. So and that's what they did, and of course the online is great too. Yeah, and it was kind of one of those things where I'm like, this was a good example of like this game actually aged a lot better than I thought it would, because some people are always kind of like throwing N64 games, and honestly they were kind of right. There's a lot of N64 games that didn't age super well.
Well, I mean, I
Um,
took that hit on Conker's Bad Fur Day. I guess you're gonna have to take that hit.
yeah, so you kind of discovered, I'm like, Conker's doesn't control super great.
It didn't.
Like,
You know what though? The N64 version I think might control better than the 360 version. 360 version had like this weird input delay.
were we talking about Rare Replay, or are we talking about the Live and Reloaded?
Live and Reloaded. The campaign in Live and Reloaded. The multiplayer in Live and Reloaded, the controls are great. In the campaign in Live and Reloaded, there's like this weird input delay that I streamed that game and it made me frustrated knowing I had beaten that fucking single story, I don't know, a dozen times as a kid, and I was looking like such trash on stream. And it was one of my bigger nights. And so like everybody's just staring at me as I'm like, I swear to God, there's an input delay. I'm getting all the timings wrong. I think actually you watched me and you're the one who pointed out there's an input delay.
It probably was,
Yeah.
honestly.
But yeah, no, a lot of N64 games didn't really age well. like I sort of cringe at the idea of going back and playing things like Jet Force Gemini, which because it didn't,
They had to add a brand new control scheme for DLC for that game because I don't know. Jet Force is good, but I think third person shooters have probably come a very long way
Oh my god,
since Jet Force Gemini, and I forget what game I was. I think it was maybe possibly one of the, well, yeah, one of the Matt McMuscles or what happened or there's some other YouTube video where they're talking about an old third person shooter from like the PS1 era, and they were talking about like how kind of awful it was, to control and to do like.
Siphon Filter.
I don't think it was Siphon Filter, but that was crossing my mind. I'm like, is that about Siphon Filter? Was it? I don't think it was Siphon Filter, but like the idea was
We all
kind of like
loved Siphon Filter at the time.
how hard it was to aim. You had to like stop and like really jankily like aim the cursor, and then for Jet Force you could actually like aim and strafe. Something that the game allowed you to do, and
Yeah.
it just controlled much better. As a third person shooter from that era, and I'm like,
Well-
yeah, sure. Jet Force's big problem is that like to actually beat the game, they require you to get everything. Like you could go through the whole game normally, and then you'll get to the last level. Like, yeah, you have to find everything before you can go through the last level, and it's like,
Yeah.
really?
I mean, was
that necessary?
I think that's like a differentiation between the old school style of gaming versus like today, where like if you look at how things have progressed, like the old school, like the kids who grew up playing those games where you had to do shit like that, or where like you were really encouraged to, or say because you were only going to have the same game for a month, so you played the shit out of it.
6 months, you mean?
Yeah, so
Same game for 6 months. Try that.
I sort of think that those are the people who really love shit like Elden Ring.
Wait, what?
Or Dark Souls or something. I think they're
I
attracted.
mean, Elden Ring's a great game if you only have like one game for 6 months to tide you over.
Yeah, I think that they're attracted. I'm not saying this as a dig. Like, I'm not saying this as like a criticism. I'm saying like they're attracted to that type of thing where it's like if you don't investigate every little thing, suddenly this boss fight or this enemy or this area is like 10 times harder. And it's like, but if you investigate everything, if you do all the fucking bullshit, all of a sudden it's like, oh, this is the strat that you discover.
Right.
Like
Well,
that
Jet
kind of
Force
stuff.
was like it was just a gatekeeping mechanic. It was like, no, you just can't play this until you get everything.
No, but like N64 era games had like so much of it was fetch questy where like you could collect this and you needed to get that. Like every game seemed to have like a find the fucking thing,
Sure. And I like that. I like sort of Easter egg hunts in games. So for me, it's great.
Yeah.
But you can overdo it. Absolutely. I'm not going to say you can't, but it always struck me as odd because people are like, I hate collectathons. I'm like, what do you like doing in video games? I'm like,
killing
things.
I
just killing things. I'm like,
yeah,
sure. I don't know. Like for me, I'm kind of like I just want to see shit blow up, and there's definitely a time and place for that. But like for me, like maybe it was just kind of like the transition, I guess, where we were kind of we were really coming like away from the arcade mentality of just like how much shit did you blow up? What was your high score?
yeah.
We were moving away from that, and then like it was kind of going into that era of like bang for your buck, where like games were valued on how long they took to complete.
Oh yeah, I mean, it used to say it on the fucking box.
Yeah,
over 70 hours
of game.
That was Final Fantasy VII had that in big letters on the PS1.
So
yeah,
that definitely was a thing where it became like the selling point was how much shit did we pack in the game. Now it's like we may have all that stuff, but we're definitely selling it to you as DLC. Go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
Give me more money.
Well, one of the things that I really loved about Ghost of Tsushima is you could go do all those things, and there was a lot of them. But also, if you decided not to, you didn't have to. Like, you could figure it out without doing that extra stuff. I mean...
Yeah, and Ghost, I think, was also good at, like, not having too much. Like, so much to the point where of absurdity, like some of these Assassin's Creed games, where it's like, look at a map and look at every single collectible on that map, and it's just like, it's just covered in covered in markers, and it's like, whoa.
One of the things that I found, like, it wasn't really annoying, but like, actually, I don't even know if it was annoying. It was a driver behind why I did as many of them as I did. Is that Ghost of Tsushima locked sort of like your abilities and like different swords and stuff like your skins, and it gave you something for hunting down.
Yeah.
And then like I think there was like key, if I'm thinking right. You had to do the different sword challenge, the chopping challenges. You had to hunt those down.
Yeah.
But there was way less chopping challenges than the millions of skins you could find from doing haikus and.
Well, there was a funny thing because always you'd be wandering around and a fucking bird flies by, a little golden bird, and you follow the bird, and it leads you to one of those things, haikus or chopping challenges or whatever. He was like, birdie, birdie, birdie.
Yeah. But I actually really liked that because it forced me to see, I don't know, more and more niche places. I like exploring in a game.
I like the way the bird kind of handled that, where it wasn't like something's over here and you're just kind of like looking for a marker, where it's like this bird is like making you climb around the environment. So you're actively having to look at the environment and look at what the bird is. Because just the way it's handled makes you appreciate the game world more, rather than an arrow above your head, or like a thing on a mini map in the corner of the screen. You're not looking at the game world, you're looking at the mini map. So I actually like the way the bird handled that, because it made you look around the environment, and then it helps that the environment goes, this just seems like one of the best looking environments in gaming right now. So
I mean, it'd be hard to beat.
You know what Ghost of Tsushima doesn't have?
What? Big ass titties?
I
don't know. I'm just throwing out some things.
It doesn't have enough music. It has great music during cutscenes and like that opening, and then that title drop is amazing. And then I wish there was more music when you were roaming around just the game world at your leisure.
You like to have music every second of the entire game.
God damn right.
That's why you can't appreciate masterpieces like Xenosaga, where you have to earn that music.
I'm so befuddled because it is Mitsuda. Mitsuda did the music. They even hired the London Philharmonic Orchestra to play the music, and then they didn't release it in Europe anyways, or the UK.
Yeah.
And it has no music. I'm so fucking bewildered by the whole fucking thing.
What's the best retro game you've like? Actually, you know what I want to, because you've been playing a bunch of them lately. Obviously, Perfect Dark's probably the best one you've played lately.
It's up there. It's up there for sure.
I mean, no one's surprised. Is Xenosaga the worst one you've fucked around with recently?
It's up there. Or Xenogears, actually.
Do you have one that you remember is good and you went back and checked it out and you're just like, ugh.
Okay. There's a couple that spring to mind. One of them being recently, and we got so much shit for this, being Kirby Air Ride. And I remember thinking, this is okay. This is kind of cute. It's kind of fun. This could probably be more fun if I dove more into it more. And we went back and we did it, and like at first it was like, what am I doing? What? And like very confusing. And then once here's the point of City Trial, is you're in this sandbox, open world environment, and you try to gather as much booster stuff as you can, like for speed and charging, for this, for that, and you try to find like a better air ride, like the legendary Dragoon air ride. So you're trying to find the best star ride, and you're trying to collect as much like goodies for stats, and you have 5 minutes to do it. And you're trying to do it before all the other people that you're playing multiplayer with build up their ride. And then at the end of 5 minutes, they throw a random mini game at you. It could be a drag race, it could be a normal race, it could be something like that, of that ilk.
Okay.
And you use all the things you've built up in the last 5 minutes to try to win, say, that special race at the end of the 5 minutes in some other location. It's not.
Isn't that one of the more popular Kirby games?
It is. People fucking love it. And I'm just kind of like, this kind of feels like a chore.
Like, oh man,
spend 5 minutes, and like this is where I'm like, okay, this is where people hate 3D platformers. I get it. I start to understand that a little more with Kirby's Air Ride, 'cause I'm like, spend 5 minutes roaming around this empty open world looking for goodies, to boost your stats, and then do a really quick race, RNG style minigame race
But you
thing of some sort
also hate
at the end of
Mario
that.
Party.
I hate the board game part of it. I actually like the mini games are great. I just hate the board game part, like sitting around waiting for fucking someone to, roll the dice, and then they get to a crossroad and they have to spend 5 minutes looking at the map.
Similar reasons that you don't like Kirby's Air Ride.
I don't know. I don't know if it was similar reasons. I just
You don't like the chore parts.
I get the aspect of it. I just don't understand why people are addicted to it, which doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense that I don't like this, because I enjoyed Blackout so much. And it's the same idea. You drop into a map, you try to find as much good loot as you possibly can, so that you can overpower the other players and win. It doesn't make sense. Why am I not enjoying this? I don't get it. I don't understand. So that was kind of one recently where I was like, it's clever. It's clever and it's cute and it's whatever. I just don't know if I like it. I don't know. Like, it's one of the things, like, I just don't find it that fun. Like, I just spend 5 minutes, in the same open city map over and over, like every time you start, just looking for random horse shit, to make your cart, if you will, your cart better, and then so you can win the race at the end of those 5 minutes. Like,
how long does the race last?
Oh, that's like a minute or less, like whatever it is. Usually it gets it's not very long. It's a very quick little race thing. But it could be, it's RNG. You don't know what you're getting. It could be a drag race. It could be a looping track. It could be other stuff too. I just, and they brought it back, and everyone keeps saying, like, it's Smash Run. It's Smash Run. Like, you'll understand when I say it's Smash Run. I'm like, do you really think I played the 3DS Smash Brothers game that much? And yes, I did play Smash Run on 3DS. I know exactly what it is. I know it functions exactly the same. It's you get on this big giant map, 2D map, side-scrolling map, and you run around collecting things, and you beat up Kremlings and other random enemies just on that map. So you're looking for the same exact symbols from Kirby Air Ride to beef your character stats up, and then at the end of 2 minutes, I think, in Smash Run, you fight a random CPU opponent and beat it. With the stats you've accrued from collecting all the stickers floating around the map. I don't find it fun. I don't like, hey, spend this X amount of minutes running around looking for stuff, so then you can play this other game. And to me, I'm just like, just let me play the other just let me just fight one-on-one. I don't I don't find it that I just don't find it that appealing to whole, like, well, you can boost your stats when you go searching around for 5 minutes. I'm like, no. No, I don't know. I'm like, I'd rather just get to the fight.
I like that you portray this fictional person trying to sell you on this as, like, I don't know, a coke fiend. What is that?
Highly excited Nintendo fan at Game Crazy. Very specific, but I remember being there.
Fair enough.
Yeah, like that was one I didn't, and I really want to, because, like, I still think it's creative and I still think it's clever. I just personally just couldn't find myself enjoying that aspect. But the one thing I really want to point out, though, is a even older game, and I beat it again. It's the second time I've completely start to finish gone through this whole game, and that's Xenogears. And that game gets worse every time I play it, start to finish. And I played it with a speed hack, because in the original game, the text crawls out, one letter at a time, like it doesn't make any noise, but, like, there is no way to speed it up, and there is no way to skip it at all in the original game. Every single line of dialogue, and granted, there's a War and Peace, sizable amount of text in this game, and you have to let it all type out, line by line, box by box, word by word.
I love that you're shitting on some of the most beloved.
And the story's a fucking mess, and I understand it more and better than I ever have, and it's still a mess. In fact, I'd say it's more of a mess when you understand what was going on here, because the game's ambitious. It's A for effort, but this guy, God bless his heart, he had this fucking space opera in his head that spans 10,000 years and is split up between about 4/4.5 eras. You know, the start of this spacefaring era that crashes on a planet, and then like the survivors and the first humans after that, and then we jump 4,000 years to a modern day like society that basically is straight up a Children of Men, before Children of Men, and that should have been the whole fucking game, but it's not for some stupid reason. And then we jump ahead another 3,500 years, and then we get to this whole like sort of sci-fi / steampunk Mobius style civil war between two nations and all the aftermath of that. And then we jump ahead 500 more years, and then we have the start of the backstories of certain characters. And then we jump 30 years past that, or 17 years or whatever, 20 years past that, and then we have the main game. So you have this Silmarillion style of all these different eras and how they all connect and all the little different pieces and how everything sort of like fed into one thing and fed into the other, and they're doing this with this.
Yeah, I can see though why it's such a beloved franchise though, like why so many people fucking love it. You know, digging into
And the battle system's not good. It's shallow as fuck. People are like, oh, you press Tekken combos. I'm like, no, you don't. Everyone has the exact same button presses, and it doesn't matter anyways. Like, okay, to do a death blow combo, which is like say square triangle square, you press square triangle square, you won't get that death blow, because in the game you have to earn the death blow by pressing that button combination 500 times. Then you get the death blow animation, and then you get to do it again now, and now there'll be an animation at the end of it. There's no fucking depth to it whatsoever. Like when you're equipping your mechs,
yeah.
like when you want to put a new engine in it, guess what? There's no equipping it. You go to a store, and when you buy a new engine, it auto equips it, and it makes the last engine you had vanish into the ether. There's no like storing up, so you can like, oh, I want to switch out or switch wet engine types or armor types. Like once you buy it at a store, it auto equips and makes the old one completely vanish off the fucking face of the planet.
Is that just limitations of the hardware though?
No, it's not. And no, it is not. There is no limitations on it, because everything I'm talking about had been done before and done better on the fucking Super NES. And the people who made this game worked on Super NES already, so I still don't get it. Just crazy stuff. So like say like you had like a specific engine type, you're like, oh wait, I didn't want to equip that, I wanted to equip something else. If there's not a mechanic in the game next to you that's selling that thing you just made vanish, you can't get it back. It's gone forever. Sorry. You're at the mercy of what's available to you in the game. Oh my god, there are so many issues with that game. The soundtrack is not one of them. The soundtrack is still one of the greatest of all time, but every time I play Xenogears, it gets worse. The pacing is terrible. The story's a fucking mess. The characters.
How many times have you played it? Why do you keep doing this to yourself?
I'm doing a Xeno Legacy. Okay, I'm playing every Xeno game from the beginning.
You're doing this for the world.
All the way till the end, till Xenoblade 3 comes out in September. But it's one of those things where it's like, it's not about aging well, but it is real fascinating to see someone hone their skills and their crafts so dramatically, like someone who gets better over time. Because like in film, I have this weird feeling where I'm like, usually a really good director, they kind of like peak at their third film or so, and then everything is sort of like varying degrees after that. And a lot of times directors sort of just trail off, like Ridley Scott. No offense to Ridley Scott fans, but it's like his best work is behind him, right? Like it's weird to see. Like I feel like in Hollywood, a lot of times directors kind of like start great and then slowly trickle down or whatever, or like it's sometimes I feel like they get to what I call the fuck you money phase, where like they made all the films they wanted to ever make, but they're in demand. So people keep calling them back to do work, and they're just doing it just to make money at that point. They don't give a shit, like Tim Burton.
Well, I think what actually happens is when you're younger, you have, I don't know, more to say and you're louder about it. And as you get older, you learn, I don't know, multiple angles. Your voice loses a little bit of its edge. But also, most really good directors, most of the directors that you think of as having like a very distinct voice, because there's really good directors that don't have a distinct voice. Ridley Scott, And I'm not even saying Roland
And
Emmerich.
he's made great movies.
Yeah.
He really has. But like
Roland Emmerich has made great movies at times, but he doesn't have any particular voice. He makes big old disaster porn. That's what he does. But what I think is that you really only have a couple of stories that you care about. And like you keep telling that same story with different characters. You keep exploring that same theme. Nolan is a perfect example of this.
Well, so's Burton.
So's Burton. Burton's been telling the same story for 30 fucking years.
Well, here's the weird thing, I guess, with Xenogames and Takahashi. He is telling. He's not even like trying to hide it.
Yeah.
Like I'm when I lose out the IP rights to this franchise, I'm just gonna retell this story as close as I can, like not hiding the fact that like Tim Burton's like it's always like the world's always this weird creepy place, and there's always this lone outsider who's misunderstood. Every Tim Burton film,
Yeah,
every single one, including Batman.
And that doesn't make them bad necessarily.
But like for Xeno, it's interesting because like he's not trying to hide the fact that I'm like, no, I am telling the same exact fucking space opera I've been trying to tell, but never been able to finish, at all these other studios. So now I'm trying to do it here where, with Burton, I feel like he probably told it, most of the stories are the same. I feel like he made every movie he wanted to make. I think Big Fish was probably the last time he gave a shit. At this point now, it's just like anytime Disney calls him up, make an Alice in Wonderland, fine.
Yeah, I don't know. I think you can sort of find that moment because making any kind of movie is exhausting.
Oh yeah, totally.
But Nolan's kind of at the top of my mind today because I almost watched Tenet. Every time I sit down to watch it, I start thinking of all the things I've heard about it, and for some reason I talk myself out of watching Tenet. I should watch it though. But he's been telling the same sort of story about our relationship with time for how many movies now? I mean, even Dunkirk, which wasn't about time, somehow became about playing with time because every facet of the movie is taking place at the same time.
And it's a race. It is a quote unquote race to get those people off the beach.
But undeniably great, filmmaker, has a strong voice. And I think a lot of like, I'm trying to think of who's like who's a filmmaker I really, really love that doesn't necessarily have a unique voice, but makes great movies. Denis Villeneuve?
I can't pin down his voice other than he just makes good movies.
He makes great movies, but like if it, if I had to pick
I'd say there's like a sort of like editing style or a pacing style to Denis Villeneuve, but that's kind of like how but it's also kind of similar to how Spielberg is like. Spielberg will, and I still remember this weird interview, like not even weird, just an interview with Spielberg about someone on the set of War of the Worlds, and someone was asking how they should shoot this shot, of an alien invasion, and Spielberg was like, yeah, we're going to shoot it from this way. And what he meant was like, we could show a wide shot or an overhead shot, aerial shot of the tripods going around blasting shit. And he's like, I'm going to shoot it ground level.
Yeah,
from
way more
perspective, because I'm going to shoot everything from the perspective of Tom Cruise and his family. You're not actually going to see like a full wide shot of what all the devastation they're doing. You're just going to see what these characters can see. And I was like, that's kind of like his effective touch, is how like where he chooses to place the camera rather than doing these. And he's all about establishing shots. I mean, that's the reason why the Indiana Jones fights are so much easier to follow, because he does wider shots and he has like a lot of spatial awareness of how to shoot a scene, which is, a great trademark. But it's interesting how sometimes like some of these crazy, like Close Encounters the same way, it's like you're not seeing this weird shot of the ship flying down to the earth and like going through the atmosphere and, this huge mega helicopter shot of like, New Mexico or Nevada or wherever it was supposed to be. It's like, no, it's like everyone looking up at the ship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Spielberg's got his voice is definitely visual, where like you know pretty immediately it's a Spielberg movie because you'll see one of three of his distinct shots, you know.
Yeah.
And J.J. Abrams has stolen a few of the pages out of that book very well. Like, you know, it's a J.J. Abrams movie, you know, when he does his twist of different Spielberg shots.
Yeah.
You know, but I think the, you know, I don't
They
know if there's
already.
anybody like that for games. I was trying to like connect that,
Oh, Kojima would be like sort of like. There's definitely Kojima isms
but
in games.
he hasn't lost a voice yet. He still has his.
No, I'm talking about like losing a voice. I
Yeah,
don't.
like if you
Okay,
want to just
here's.
talk about people who you know it's their game, Mikami, Kojima,
Yeah.
um, fucking,
We booted up Beautiful Joe recently, and we're like, this is such a Kamiya game. You know, it just got his touch and flair all over it. He definitely has a distinct voice. I would say one of the voices that I feel is kind of lost. Granted, he hasn't directed a game since 1998, but I would say Miyamoto's particular voice is kind of gone because like the most involved he was a game in a game's development was Star Fox Zero, and
huh,
it just like the whole thing was just kind of like
a
it was
mess.
a mess, and he felt. It feels like, I mean, granted, he's very high up in the company now, so he's not really doing game development, but like he feels very out of touch in today's world of what people kind of want and expect from gaming. Um,
Hmm.
and his stuff has aged well, but his more recent stuff, like the stuff he was more heavily involved in, you know, even if it was still just a producer role, it like I remember. Okay, so like I remember when New Super Mario Brothers Wii was first announced at E3, and they're like, "This is something Miyamoto's been wanting to do for generations, but he never could up until this point." And I'm like, "The fuck? Like, he couldn't do a four-player Mario till now? That bullshit."
He
And like,
never had the
I was even
choice.
there at the round table where he was actually playing. Like, he played the game himself, and he's actually fairly good at Mario platformers himself. He's not a guy who doesn't know how to
You'd
play his own
hope.
games.
You'd hope by now.
But it was kind of like, you know, from that era, and like that you know, that's even before Star Fox Zero. That's during the Wii era, and it kind of feels like Miyamoto kind of feels like he was like kind of like losing touch a bit, where it's just kind of like, okay, Geppetto, it's not 1983 any longer. You can't just think of one quirky game mechanic and then base the whole fucking $50 to $60 experience on that. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't work anymore. We're not throwing one quarter into a machine and getting 3 minutes of entertainment. Um,
So what's I mean, going on the aging well, I guess what is there a singular creator who made a retro game and then has recently like put something out where it's like they still have their voice and their touch? Because I can't think
mm,
of one, you know, and I guess I think more of video games from studios rather than specific, you know, because it's not
right,
really an
and
auteur medium,
mhm, true,
no
true.
matter how much Naughty Dog wants you to believe it is. Um, you know, not a dig at like I like their games, but like no one person is responsible for all of the game.
Well,
Um,
we're going to see some interesting stuff. One of the ones you could say is still got his touch is Tim Schafer from Double Fine. You
huh.
know, he worked on a lot of those LucasArts games, you know, back in the day, and he's still doing stuff like Psychonauts 2 came out. And it's still definitely, even though it's a 3D platformer and not a point and click game, it's still definitely got that Double Fine Tim Schafer touch,
Well,
right?
someone was saying that about the guy who did the Oddworld games. Like
Oh,
he
Lauren
still got
Lanning.
it. Like
Lauren
he
Lanning. Yeah, I don't, you know, because they had a remake or something come out not that long ago for Oddworld, if I remember right. Wasn't that long ago. I want to say a couple of years ago, maybe.
hmm.
And yeah, it was kind of funny because like you had Oddworld, which was, you know, an out of this world clone, more or less style kind of game, and then you had Munch's Odyssey, which who the fuck knows what that is. Um, and then you had Stranger's Wrath, which is interesting because it's a first person shooter, and apparently it's very good, but you know it's so far removed from that side scroller, cinematic platformer of the original, Oddworld games, right?
Yeah, and he's done a
So
return to form on that now, right?
return to form on that, yes. Um, Sorry, there's a bug in here.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's actually a good example of like, okay, this guy was away for a while, and he came back, and he's still got his voice. Now, I think there's some, I'm not gonna get into the other stuff. I think there's something questionable about something he said or did otherwise. But as far as like the game development is concerned, yeah, that's a really good example of like this guy had a really unique style and vision of gameplay for Oddworld, Abe's Odyssey, and he came back to it,
Yeah, I
and
mean,
he kind of still got it,
I guess the two obvious ones that you could talk about is like Miyazaki with the Dark Souls.
Here's my thing on that, because I feel Miyazaki, he's still in his sort of like, prime. Right?
Yeah.
Like yes, Demon Souls came out a while ago and it's already been remade.
Yeah, I guess
But
you
I'm
can't
like,
really call that retro. What counts as retro now? PS2?
it's got at least PS2, if not older, man. Like,
I still think I still think when you say retro, I think like PS1 and
yeah,
earlier.
me too. Yeah,
but for a lot of people, PS2 is
just crossing
old.
the 3D threshold is also weird. I mean, it is retro now, but like, yeah, I still kind of think like before the dawn of polygons is retro to me. But like, come on, I know N64 PlayStation 1 is definitely retro now.
Because world.
I mean, there are other people I also think who've gotten way out of touch. Unfortunately, I have to say it, but like Yu Suzuki, man's way out of fucking touch.
Was it that he did?
Shenmue.
Well.
He did many classic Sega games, but like Shenmue, when he got the good graciousness to do a part 3 and continue his story, he decided he's still going to go ahead with his fucking filler arc.
I'll tell you what.
God knows what reason.
You know who still has their voice stronger than ever? David Cage.
No, he doesn't. I don't know if you've heard. Like, apparently, he just got bought by China, actually.
Oof.
So that Star Wars Eclipse game apparently is like 7 years away from release at this point because they cannot find anyone who wants to work on it.
I was gonna say, like, it's a David Cage game.
Well, that's true. You definitely know. You know who had, and then he's only done like a couple games at this point, but Joseph Ferris, who did a way Out and It Takes Two, like very distinct co-op stuff now. But like, yeah, David Cage, he just got bought by Tencent. Yeah, because nobody wanted, and apparently they're having a huge trouble getting anyone to work on Star Wars Eclipse. Because everyone knows, because everyone knows how fucking awful the culture and working conditions are at his studio. So no one's biting, even for like higher salaries. And it's like, well, you get what you deserve for that one.
I guess what we're getting at is fuck David Cage, but
you know what really hasn't aged, badly, or hasn't aged at all. Still, really is honestly like a lot of the old Capcom fighters. Like Street Fighter 1 sucks. Like that's a rough game to play now. But Street Fighter 2
still looks great. Yeah.
It still looks great, it still plays great. I mean, and
fighting games in general age fairly well.
That's a little stiff. It's a little stiff, whatever. But I mean, like, if you get to like at least to the Alpha 1 stages or the, X-Men Children of the Atom, like everything from that point forward doesn't look aged at all. Like Street Fighter 2 is like, okay, yeah, it is. It is like high-end 16-bit, Neo Geo era. Like it does definitely look a little bit to its time, but like it still plays great. But like Alpha 1, like anything CPS2 Capcom board onward, it doesn't look any worse. It doesn't look aged or dated at all. It looks like it still looks perfect. Like it's like you look at like say Alpha 2, Alpha 3, I'm like, can you imagine this game looking better? No. Like,
yeah, to be fair though, with especially that 16-bit onward, fighting games had a style that kind of just lends itself to aging well.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, unless you try to do like 3D, I guess, in the 32-bit.
Yeah, sure.
Or 16, 64-bit. But like, your hand drawn looking sprites
Mhm.
type.
Yeah, like
just gonna look good. Yeah.
because CPS2 is basically like 32 bits. Let's just call it that. 32 bit
Yeah.
for simplicity's sake. Your PlayStation 1 2D era, right? Like you get to that point, sprites could look as good as the person could think of it, more or less.
Yeah.
Like, granted, with a little caveat, a little whatever. But like
the stuff that's not going to age well on that, I guess, would probably be like audio. But even then,
yeah,
people have a nostalgia for the audio of the
for the Q sound. Yeah, definitely the little. You're right. Like some of the audio stuff, it might be people are like, like they're using really old synth samples.
Yeah.
But like that's what they had at the time, so maybe that's a little dated, but whatever, nobody cares. Like
it was fucking cutting edge at the time.
Yeah, so those are probably in a way like these games aged perfectly, and they aged so well that after there was that hiatus, and they came back with Street Fighter 4, even though it was all in 3D, it still plays more or less the exact same Street Fighter 2, Street Fighter Alpha. Like they did not change the fundamental core gameplay of Street Fighter at all when it came back in 2009. Why? Because there was no need to. There was nothing wrong. I mean, that's why there was a break, is because Capcom felt that they had done all they could do and there wasn't anything new to add to it. Which
how refreshing is that? A company
long
just
gone.
being like, hey, we're just not going to beat this to death.
Which is funny because coming from Capcom. But I mean, like, they did kind of beat it to death because there was like a new fighting game every 6 months from them. But like, it's still at the same time, it's like, yeah, but because that gameplay was so good, the fundamental act of like, moving, jumping, and, hitting, light, medium, heavies, like, that was so rock solid. They didn't need to. They didn't need to drastically reinvent. There was no need to reinvent any wheel there. Like with a lot of other games, you definitely can see, like, when you play Tenchu.
Yeah.
You play Tenchu 1, and then you play Sekiro, which was going to be a Tenchu game at one point, but turned into Sekiro. Regardless, same developer, right? Tenchu's a piece of shit. Like, aged terribly. But Sekiro is great because of the massive amount of advancements, not just in graphics, but just in movement and how you move your character. Tomb Raider 1.
I
love
Tenchu. I loved it.
I'm right, though.
But I will not go back and play it.
Tomb Raider? The original 4 Tomb Raider games?
Well, a lot of that early 3D shit.
That early 3D where it's like you press up and they move up one grid space.
Yeah. I mean, it didn't age well, but I liked it at the time. And I'm gonna leave that in the past. That's what we're gonna do.
Well, some of them you leave in the past, and some of them are kind of like, this is a wine, I can bring it out, and some of it is cheese. And if you bring a cheese wheel out from 1997, ain't gonna look like cheese. It's gonna look like fucking mold.
Why we always accidentally end on a really gross note. The cheese wheel.
The cheese wheel from 97 versus the wine bottle from 97. Which one do you think aged better? Some games are wine bottles, some games are cheese wheels.
Yeah, as we end, what I'll do is I'll plug the fact that we do have a Discord. We do have a Discord chat where you can hop in there and begin discussions on this. And both Matt and I are in there occasionally. So if you want to post pictures of moldy cheese and tell me the game that you think is the moldy cheese of games.
Yeah, what is your moldy cheese of games?
What is the moldy cheese and the fine wine of the games?
Yeah, what is your moldy Sonic Adventure, versus your fine wine of Mario 64?
Or you can tweet us. You see that on the video at Funk Machine PhunkMachine, or at Doom Assist Me. Don't send chodes. The cheese wheel thing, I feel like, is going to be tempting to send me a chode, and I don't want it. Don't do it. And on that note, we've got some producer. Actually, do you have any final thought?
On this? I do think great gameplay is great gameplay. There are occasions where, a game really just can benefit from higher fidelity. I mean, higher graphical power. Perfect Dark is the core example of that, where I'm like, okay, the game ran at like 20 frames a second on N64. The 360 version runs at a smooth 60. The game didn't need to change at all. It just needed more juice. So
RE4.
sometimes,
RE4 has been updated several times, but if you go back and play the GameCube version, it looks like muddy shit.
it kind of does.
It does.
Uh,
All it
God,
needed was a
God,
bump graphically.
God bless those two dudes in Spain who decided they were gonna like masterfully preserve that game, but also update it.
Yeah.
Or I should say masterfully update it. So it looks amazing now. So yeah, but like the core gameplay is still there.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So some games like Tenchu, like Tomb Raider original, like their gameplay idea needed refinement and got refinement over time.
Tenchu was great.
Um,
Tenchu was great. How dare you? Ricky Maru and I murdered a lot of bad ninjas and bandits. Okay.
I'm just saying, you can go back and play Mario 64, and you can put Mario 64 in the hands of a newbie gamer, and they're gonna find it great and fun and a good time. You put Tenchu 1 in the hands of someone who's knowledgeable of modern video games, and you give him Tenchu 1, he's gonna like, what the fuck is this? This game is trash.
How dare you? And
But
now,
it was an important. Some games are stepping stones, and some games are cornerstones.
okay,
You like that better?
yeah, that's a good note to end on. This is very philosophical of you. On that note, we've got producers to thank. If you're interested in becoming a patron at any level, please check out patreon.com/YoVideogames podcast. Maybe you want to hop on there and tell me that some beloved games of mine are total pieces of shit. But at least you'll have to call them a stepping stone. Our producers for this episode are The Arnett, Scroonami, Top 35, Hyper Viper 89, and Ziggy Z. Thank you, dudes, and we will catch you next time.
Later, dudes.